Here's a question that less than 1% of pickleball players know the answer to. How long do you have to serve as soon as the score has been called? Do you think it is A, 5 seconds, B, 10 seconds, C, 15 seconds, or D, 30 seconds? Now, by the end of this video, I'm going to give you the answer to that question and hopefully answer a ton more questions that you have as I clear up common misconceptions in pickleball, as well as confusing rules that not a lot of people understand. So stick with me. Let's open the playbook. Number one, the kitchen or non-volley zone. So in the pickleball rule books, it's not referred to as the kitchen. You won't even find the word kitchen inside the 2024 pickleball rulebook. I don't know about previous years. That's because it's actually not called the kitchen. This is just a slang term that was made up as the kitchen. I don't know exactly where it came from. If you do know where it came from, comment below. It would be really interesting to figure that out. But it's actually called the non-volley zone. And that's because you can't volley in this zone. And that actually answers our very first common misconception, which is, can you go into the kitchen? You can absolutely go into the kitchen. You just can't volley in there. You can't volley in the non-volley zone or kitchen because it's a non-volley zone. You can stand in there, you could lay in there, you can hit balls in there so long as they bounce prior. You just can't take the ball out of the air. By the way, every single rule that I talk about today will be linked in the description of this video, along with this section and that exact rule number. That way you don't just have to take my word for it, but you can just see it in the pickleball rule book. It's obviously a lot more entertaining if I share it with you rather than you having to go through and read the entire rule book. So if you appreciate that, go ahead and click that like button on this video. It really helps me out a ton, and also it helps more people to be able to see the video. By the way, the sponsor of this video is Selkirk. If you guys are in need of any paddles or gear, I cannot suggest them enough. Absolutely love their paddles. They just barely came out with the new Halo series. This is one of the paddles. They look absolutely sick, and they have tons of spin. They're raw carbon fiber. So be sure to check them out. I will link them in the description. I'll also link them at the top of the screen. The next confusing kitchen rule or non-volley zone rule is the momentum rule. So with your momentum, you are not allowed to go into the kitchen even if the ball is dead. What that means is if you volley a ball and then you fall into the kitchen after, or you step onto the kitchen line, you automatically lose that point. So the rule all comes down to momentum. If you end up after the point stepping into the kitchen, maybe you're going to paddle tap because it's the end of the game, or maybe you're just stepping through the kitchen to go grab your towel off on the side fence, that's completely fine so long as it's not your momentum that brought you into it. And this is where it can get a little bit confusing, and it can kind of be up to the opinion of the ref or the actual player that's playing. But I'd say 99 times out of 100, you're gonna know if it was your momentum that had you go into the kitchen or if it was just because you were stepping into the kitchen after the point was over. So when you're playing in recreation, that's where it kind of comes down to integrity and telling the other team, hey, actually my momentum brought me into the kitchen, so we lost that point. Tell the other team, be an honest person. Not everybody's gonna be honest. And don't expect honesty in return. A person that's full of integrity is extremely important to the sport, and it's also important to your day-to-day life. So, and in a tournament, you're gonna be called out on this all the time by refs. This is what refs are specifically looking for, are non-volley zone line faults. So yeah, just remember it comes down to momentum. That can be kind of confusing, but just make sure that your momentum isn't bringing you into the kitchen even after the point is over and the ball has bounced twice. The next confusing kitchen rule is that you can't cross the plane of the net. So this is a really confusing rule that not a lot of people understand because they're like, what's the plane of the net even mean? And I honestly think it's a stupid rule. It should be changed, but nevertheless, it is a rule. But refs will call this, and they call it all the time because it's another thing that they're looking for. So something that you need to avoid. Essentially, what the plane of the net is where the net is on either side post, there's an imaginary plane that you go through. So if you cross onto your opponent's side of the court, you've crossed the plane of the net. And if you do this without first having made contact on your side of the net, you automatically lose the point. So a good example of this would be that you jump for an ernie, you land on their side of the net, you whiff the ernie. So you totally miss it. Because you landed on their side of the net and stepped over that plane, you automatically lose the point, even if your partner can go back and get that ball and keep you in the point. The only time that this doesn't apply is if your opponent's hit the ball with tons of spin, lands on your side of the kitchen, and then comes back over to their side of the kitchen without you even touching it. As soon as that ball comes back over the net, you can reach over the net and hit that ball out of the air. This is obviously super rare, but if that ever happens, make sure that you're prepared for it and that you don't cross over the plane of the net before the ball goes over the plane of the net. Along with this rule, you can't cross the plane of the net with your paddle. So your paddle can't go over the net unless you first made contact with the ball. Number 2 is pickleball scoring. This is the most confusing part about pickleball, is the actual scoring of it all. So the first thing is pretty simple, but the entire score has to be called prior to the actual service motion taking place. So you can't call it as you serve. It has to happen prior to you starting your serve. Another confusing serve rule is that you only get one serve if you start the game. So if you are the server, let's say that you choose to serve, and you're playing doubles, it's you and your partner. Your partner's not going to get a chance to serve on that side out. Meaning you serve the ball, let's say that you miss it into the net, it's automatically your opponent's turn to serve. But now that they're serving, both one partner and two partners, both of your opponents get to serve that ball on that side out. So they have 2 chances to win points with the serve. As soon as the ball comes back to you, you guys now have 2 opportunities. But it's just the initial serve of every single game. You only get 1 shot to win that point. If you win the point, you obviously continue serving, but your partner never gets to serve. In singles, this doesn't apply at all because you don't have a first server and a second server. Since it's just 1 versus 1, you only get 1 serve per side out. So as soon as you lose the point, it's your opponent's turn to serve. Whole lot easier to understand on the singles side. Speaking of singles, keeping the score in singles is extremely simple. All that you're gonna do is say your score first and then your opponent's score right after. So if I have 2 points, my opponent has 3 points, I would say 2-3, never 3-2. In doubles, it's a little bit more confusing because you also have to say what server you are at the end. So just like with singles, you start with your score, then you say your opponent's score, and then you say what server you are. So if you just had a side out and you guys just got the ball back, you would be server number 1. As soon as you guys lose the point, it goes to server number 2, who's your partner. So the way that you would say the score, if you had 2, your opponents had 3, and you were the first server of that side out, you would say 2, 3, 1, because I'm the first server. The score is 2, my opponents have 3, and I'm server number 1. 2, 3, 1. If you're server number 2 because you lost the point, it would be 2, 3, 2. This definitely takes players the most time to wrap their head around. It takes people literally months, sometimes years, to learn how to keep the score correctly. So just remember, it's your score first, then your opponent's, and then what server you are. It's literally that simple. Don't overthink it. And remember that practice makes perfect. Last thing to talk about with the score is that you only score when you're serving. So it's called side out scoring rather than rally scoring. Meaning, whenever you have a side out and it's your turn to serve, you can score a point. If your opponents are ever serving, you never score a point on their serve, your score freezes. So just simply remember, if you're serving the ball, you go up points. If you're not serving the ball, you freeze where you're at. Number 3 is third shot rules. So with the third shot of the rally, a lot of us know that the ball has to bounce. Okay, it's called the double bounce rule, which I also hate, doesn't make any sense. But essentially, if you're the serving team, you serve the ball, your opponents return the ball, that ball that comes back from your opponents has to bounce on the court before you guys can officially start the rally. Once the ball has bounced, you could drop the ball, you could drive the ball, but you obviously can't volley the ball. So in other words, you can't serve and volley. You can't hit your serve, run up to the net and hit the next ball out of the air. That ball has to bounce. So just remember, the third shot of the rally, before you hit it as the server, you have to let that ball bounce. You can hit a drive, you can hit a drop, you can hit a drip, which is another shot you probably don't know about. That's a mixture of a drive and a drop. You can do whatever you want. You just can't volley that ball out of the air. Number 4 is serve rules. And this is where we're going to get the answer to that question. How much time do you have before you have to serve the ball after calling the score? So if you guessed B, congratulations. You're a part of the 1%, which is pretty impressive. But a lot of people don't know that. Kind of a rare rule that people don't know about. But as soon as you call the score, you can't just wait around. You only have 10 seconds to serve the ball, which is actually quite a bit of time. That brings us to another serve rule that's extremely confusing. So in pickleball, there are 2 types of serves. There's the volley serve and the drop serve. The volley serve sounds like how it is, the drop serve doesn't. And I'll explain that in just a second. But the volley serve, just like how it sounds, you hit a volley out of the air, has to be below your waist, and the ball also has to make contact below your wrist. So your paddle has to be beneath your wrist as you make contact with the ball. If you do those 2 things, you've hit a successful volley serve. If you hit it above the waist or above the wrist, then it does not qualify as a volley serve and you automatically lose that point. The other serve in pickleball is the drop serve. This one doesn't sound like the name of it because you do drop the ball, but it actually bounces on the ground and then you hit it off of the bounce. I think it should be called the bounce serve, so we should figure out how we can get that name changed. If you agree with me, let me know in the comments. Maybe you don't. Maybe it makes more sense to you to just keep it as a drop serve. But that serve, you have to drop it. So you can drop it from any reachable height. Okay, you can't obviously get on a ladder. Any reachable height from your feet, you can drop it from. It bounces, and then none of those rules apply. You can hit it above your waist. Your motion doesn't have to be low to high. You could hit it above your wrist, everything like that. The thing is that if you drop a ball from your highest point, it's not going to go above your waist anyway. So kind of a cool serve. I really like it. The only problem with that serve is that when it's windy outside, it's nearly impossible to hit that serve because as soon as you drop it, the ball is just gone. So you can't really hit an effective serve with that. So that's nice that there are two options. And those are the rules for those two serves. Now, where it gets confusing is that the Professional Pickleball Association, or PPA, just barely passed their own rule that only applies to pros. And lots of amateurs think that it applies to them. And that is that they have to drop the serve and hit it out of the air. They're not allowed to do drop serves, but they have to drop it and hit it out of the air. They can't toss it up, let it fall back down, and then hit it. The second thing is that it has to be below their hip, which is essentially the same as the waist. That's where they have to drop it from. So there can't be any lift with that serve. But like I said, it can get confusing for you. The next serve rule that's a little confusing is that you actually play lets in pickleball. Now, this is another rule that does not apply to pros, but to everybody else, the 99.9% it applies to. You play a let. What a let is if you're serving, you hit the top of the net and it lands inside the correct service box, you play that point. Now, this doesn't apply to pros. Whenever they hit a let, they actually replay the point, just like how you'd see in other racket and paddle sports like tennis. But for everybody else, you actually play the let. So be ready. If the ball hits the top of the net and then lands inside the correct service box, you're going to be playing that point. Another confusing rule with the serve is that it only applies to when you're serving, but if the ball lands on the kitchen line or non-volley zone line, same exact line, right? If it lands on that line, it's automatically out. So if it hits a sideline or the center line or the baseline, all of those lines are in 100% of the time. The only line that's out some of the time, when you're serving in particular, is the kitchen line. Yeah, so hopefully that answers all of your pickleball questions about confusing rules. Any ones that I didn't cover, I'm sorry, first of all. Second of all, leave me a comment. I get back to everybody. I comment back to everybody. Comment below. Let's make this a thread. Any questions that you have, I'm happy to answer them. I'll use the rule book and I'll even link the specific rule to it if you want me to. Let me know if you do at the end of the comment because I don't really want to spend that time, but I will for you if you need me to. So ask those questions below. Don't forget to subscribe for daily pickleball content. And if you want to improve your pickleball game, watch this video that I just made right here. You're going to absolutely love it. And I'll see you on the next one.